Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Sailor. In this episode, myself, Ush, and my boat Elmer leave the Marina in Loch Derg on the River Shannon. Follow us as we go downstream, making our way to the ocean. I hope you enjoy. With the mast down and secured on a cradle, myself and Ush were ready to embark on the journey downstream. This trip would take us over 120 nautical miles. The River Shannon has a rich history, going back thousands of years. Before the first roads in Ireland, the rivers were the main mode of transport for the people, also providing food and fresh water, so a deep respect was held for the rivers. In Ireland, we're fortunate to have many mythological stories still told today. For thousands of years, these stories have been passed down from generation to generation, only documented when the monks came to Ireland way back in the 5th century. So I feel blessed to now have my own connection to this river. Although I was excited to be leaving the Marina, I was also sad to be saying goodbye to the small town of Killaloe. It's a charming place and well worth a visit. Many people asked me, why don't I just lift the boat out and take it on a truck to the destination? For me, this would be a huge expense. It's not cheap to lift boats out and transport them on trucks, and I really feel it would rob me of an adventure. I was nervous about one section of this trip. There were 3 locks we would have to get through, and the largest of them was at Ardnacrusha, a hydroelectric power station on the River Shannon. The total drop is 100 feet or 30 meters in 2 sections. Some boat owners had told stories to try scare us. Most boats leave later in the season when the water levels are lower and there isn't as much current on the lower section of the river. It felt like we were dropping down into our grave, but it worked out okay, and we were out on the other side, meandering towards the urban environment of Limerick City. After the peace and tranquility of our time in the countryside, it was a little daunting coming into a city with lots of noise and people watching. We found a place to tie our boat for the night, which had a fine view of the 13th century King John's Castle. We were a little nervous about staying the night in Limerick City. Although a beautiful city, it has a reputation for being a bit rough around the edges, but we survived the night and no bottles of beer were chucked at our boat, so we were pretty happy. The next morning we were back to business. We had one last lock to get through, and then we would be on the flow out to the Shannon estuary. It rained during the morning, but being Irish, this was something we were used to. While we waited for the gates to open, we appreciated the cute little flowers growing out of the wall. There was now nothing but water between us and the ocean.
Where else you're gonna get a chance to do Mast? Against the wall, yeah.
The Shannon estuary is heavily industrialized. We were a tiny boat, just 23 feet long, so we felt pretty vulnerable sharing the water with such large vessels. We passed a beautiful lighthouse on Beeves Rock, which I later learned was completed in 1855. Setting out on the journey, we hadn't really planned anything, like where we would stay the night. We sort of made it up as we went along. We were using Navionics charts, so we spotted the Marina here at Foynes, and it seemed like a fine place to stay. There were no more bridges to pass under, so it was time to raise the mast. We lifted it into the mast step. Then we attached all of the standing rigging, the wires which would hold up the mast. As we heaved up the mast, we didn't know it, but two of the bottle screws, which were connected to the deck, had kinked, and we were now bending them out of shape. To make matters worse, we were about to get a bowsprit up the rear end from this beautiful classic boat. Once everything was tightened, we examined the damage. Two bottle screws completely bent. Looking back on this footage, I can see these bottle screws were in really bad shape anyway, and they should have all have been replaced. I could see Ush felt guilty for some reason, so I figured a beer would sort things out.
Cheers. The disaster.
I got a lift to a nearby marine store. They had no bottle screws that size, so we used rope to lash it together and hoped that it would work. We had a wonderful calm evening to rest. The next morning we would have to get up really early to use the outgoing tide to bring us down to the end of the estuary. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a like, consider subscribing, and leave a comment or ask a question. I read all of them and I reply to all of them as well. Thanks for watching again, and next time myself and Ush actually make it out to the ocean and we set up the sails and go sailing.